Hi, my name is Minda Hartz. Welcome to Secure the Seat on LinkedIn Live. I am so excited. You could be anywhere on the internet right now and you're here with us. You're having lunch with me and Valeisha Butterfield Jones. I am having such a fangirl moment. I've been following Valeisha for a long time. She's a business leader. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author. She is all the things magical. And I'm so excited to have our conversation. Valeisha, welcome to Secure the Seat.
Thank you, Minda. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. Good to see you.
So listen, if you've joined us before, you have the chat, make sure that you are asking the questions because this is your opportunity to connect. You're having lunch with Felicia, so ask her the things that you've always wanted to ask her. So we'll get to that. But Felicia, tell everybody a little bit about you.
You know, it's funny because I grew up in North Carolina in a little country town called Wilson with wonderful parents, and just, lived a very unexpected life, right? Like I had these big dreams to work in the music business as a little girl from as early as I can remember, like maybe 6 years old. I had a desire to work in the music industry. It was something that I felt was so far out of reach though. And so I've spent my entire life just chasing my dreams, to be honest with you, and manifesting my dreams. And now, if you fast forward, I've spent 20 years in the diversity and inclusion space, which is where I found my passion and found my purpose. And so I started out in the entertainment world, working for a lot of great companies. I've made a transition, which a lot of people don't know, to the Alzheimer's Association, where I led diversity and inclusion when my grandmother was, suffering from the disease and illness. And then in the Obama administration and Obama campaign, fast forward, I spent almost 5 years at Google leading diversity and inclusion with our CDO at the time, Melanie Parker, who's an amazing person and team, and now at the Recording Academy. And so I've spent 20 years so deeply grounded in my purpose. And I feel such a full circle moment happening now with the new role at the Recording Academy.
And we're rooting for you. We're so excited that you have that seat at the table representing us, not putting all the pressure on you, but being one of those voices that can lead the change as we're in this future of work. So again, congratulations. And all of you, don't forget to put your questions in for Valeisha. But you've been in diversity inclusion for a while now. What should good look like right now? A lot of companies are saying that they stand with their Black employees, but what does good look like? Because the decisions that we make right now are really going to be pivotal.
Well, I'll first say that we have entered what I believe to be a real opportunity for change. And so if you look at all the social unrest happening in our world, if you look at racial justice being brought to the forefront, it's, the headline of every news channel right now, every front page of every paper. I think it is a business imperative for any company and corporation interested in doing this work to really prioritize it and to prioritize it now. However, we know, right, we cannot center around performative action, so putting out a hashtag that, excuse me, says Black Lives Matter, or, throwing money at the cause, which is very important and critical, I should say, investing in the cause financially, but also you have to really look around your leadership bench and examine, do you truly embody and embed D&I principles at the board level? So that would be a start, looking at your board representation to make sure that it truly is inclusive. The second is looking at your C-suite and executive ranks to see, is leadership inclusion a part of that equation? And if not, I would definitely center and focus there. And then supplier diversity. It's so important to look at the companies that you're doing business with and partnering with and procuring for the work that you do. And I think I say this all the time, don't only look at us as talent and employees, but also as board level executives and appointees and as potential businesses that you would want to procure for your business.
Yeah, for the people in the back, you hear that? It's not just about, putting us in the seats internally, but, who are you, diversity supplier? Like you said, there's so many of us that could come in and speak or run a workshop or, even fix the elevator. There's so many different angles to that. Is there anything else you want to say with that in mind, just in terms of, so like leaders right now, what should they be thinking about themselves? Because it seems like a lot of people are just saying the right things, but some of this leadership is an inside job. Would you agree?
I would say it's all an inside job, right? I think we have to operate first from our domain, which means operating from the inside out of the companies and corporations that you represent. And so, it would be a big miss if we were to externally do all the work that is needed and necessary right now without doing the work at home. And so I always say, anyone who has worked with me knows that I always say to take care of home first. Like, you really have to work and have an inside out approach, because it would be just detrimental to any D&I practice to not make sure that your employees have opportunity, have access, have a seat at the table, to Benda's book title, and just all the things to make sure that we're truly set up for success when we enter these corporate spaces. And so some of those things should include a retention strategy, but also a progression strategy, right? So you not only want to retain your Black employees, which of course would be a goal, but you want to make sure that we also have upward mobility. We want to make sure that we have progression and a pathway to leadership. And so really thinking critically about the entire life cycle of your employees and of your Black employees to make sure that we truly have a path and a view into leadership and critical steps and support and sponsorship and access and mentorship to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. The Black lives have to matter inside the house too. So I'm glad that you made that point. And the other thing, I know that a lot of initiatives are being created, or there's different statements being put out there. But let's look at the employee side. How can Black employees or underrepresented employees leverage this opportunity right now to find their voice?
I mean, if ever there was a time, it is now for you and for us to really make sure that we're influencing our leadership. And by influence, I mean, have the conversation now. Don't wait. I think often we, maybe overanalyze and think that we have this beautiful deck and strategic plan and all the things laid out. And in fact, sometimes we have to humanize that data and go into the conversation very clear about our experiences in this space, right? And so the data is there. In most companies, they know the data. You may not have access to the data, but they know the data, they know the numbers. But when we go into those conversations authentically and share the truth, not only of our experience, but of the experience of our community in these spaces, and we say very clearly, like, these are the things, right, that if you're truly invested in us, we would need to see happen. Yep. And I would lay those things out and have the conversation now. And I'll say that it is important to partner and collaborate with those leaders in the organization who really want to do the work. Right. And so influence is a part of the strategy. Yes. Going into having the conversation, being very clear around an aligned agenda and strategy, but also finding those allies in the space, those folks who are asking you right now, because I know they are, how can I help? Yeah. Here's how you can help, friend. Right. Like, here's how we need you to pull up. And it's saying, these are the 5 things. I'm going into this conversation. I need you to reinforce it. Will you lock arms with me to make this happen? And I would put it on the line and ask folks very clearly, is it a yes or is it a no? Right. And if it's a no or if it's a maybe, then you need to move on. Right. Because I would almost guarantee that there are enough people in your organization that you could partner with now to really drive that agenda.
Oh, I love it. I feel like pulling my tambourine out. Like, that was on point, because I think you hit on something. We need to know what our ask is. Don't just go in there and sit on the committee when they pull
session. No.
Yeah, have your concrete asks, because this is the time. I'm going to take a couple quick questions from the audience, because they've touched on, how do you know that your company is really ready for diversity, equity, inclusion, or is it just a political thing that they're trying to do right now? How do you know the difference, is what they're asking?
So I think the readiness test, if you will, or I guess that's the right way to put it, is to ask the question, right? And when you ask the question, you can tell by the response. And if you're seeing, an appetite for this already through the tweets that the company may be sending, the LinkedIn posts, whatever that the company may be communicating externally, when you ask the question internally to determine readiness, it's, as simple as, I see that we've decided to take a stand. And I'm really proud of, us as an organization for taking that bold step. So my question is, can we work together now to create a plan, a very clear plan to prioritize Black employees in this company? And I'd love to be a partner with you in that effort and see how, and pause and wait for the response. Sometimes we don't pause and wait for the response, right?
Right.
I've learned over time that sometimes you just stop and shift the responsibility to that leader or to that stakeholder to respond. And in that response, you'll normally be able to tell the readiness level. However, I'll say this, if you decide or determine that the company's not ready, you now have a decision to make, right? On whether you want to be in that space, on whether you believe that there's room to influence a different outcome. And if not, I would say, we have also the opportunity to choose, right? If we still want to continue in the space that may not be ready for what we know we need to thrive in these spaces.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Felicia, because the reality is we're wanted right now in a lot of spaces. So if your company is not pulling up, then figure strategically what you need to do to get to the right space or build your own space. But know that, one of my favorite quotes is by Audre Lorde. She says, beware of feeling like you're not good enough to deserve it. And you deserve to be in a space in which you can thrive. So I'm so glad you said that.
I should say one quick thing on that point, Minda. We have to be very aware. Like I have my antenna up all the time around like the deficit narrative talk, right? About who we are in these spaces. And so caution that if you're ever in a space, right, or a corporation where you may hear things like, well, what's happening with Black talent? Why are they leaving the company at a faster rate, right? Why are Black employees, not satisfied or having a great experience? Could it be? And then you start to hear the could it be's, right? The could it be's could be, well, do they want to go back to school and get a higher degree or education? Or do you think that, I'm just giving you examples, or do you think that the Black employees in the organization may, not want to live in Silicon Valley? Could that be the thing, right? And I would caution that conversation and say that whenever I'm involved in those conversations, I shift the narrative. That it's actually exactly what you just said, Minda. Black talent is highly sought after in the industry. We receive competitive offers by the day, right? Our LinkedIn box is popping, right? Because we bring so much value into these spaces, right? And so I think it's so important for us to just have teachable moments and correct every time you see that conversation spinning to a different narrative, because we know, right, the value that we bring, and it's not magic. I used to say Black girl magic all the time, which I do believe in, but it's also hard work, grit, focus, education. Like we're the highest educated group. We're the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. We're all the things, right, that our parents raised us to be. And so don't allow anyone to shift that narrative to something else, because we know the value that we bring and we have to remind them whenever they get it wrong.
Absolutely. That part. The other question that I wanted to pull from the audience was, how did you get into diversity, equity, and inclusion? How should someone shift if they're looking to get into it?
That's actually a hard question. So I would say I kind of just lived it before I ever pursued it. Right? Like D&I is now this kind of catchphrase term that, has become really sexy, right? And a highly sought after career path. But the truth is, it really began as purpose-driven work, grounded in racial equity, right? Grounded in gender equity, grounded in just making sure that everyone had equal access and opportunity, right? And so that's where it began. And that work for me began 20 years ago, before there was, I don't believe at the time, like a CDIO type of role. And if there were few of them. And so I would say it really began with the work. It began with just being really grounded in my purpose, which at the time was in the music industry, and thinking that I wanted to be this creative executive, realizing that I wasn't creative at all. And then finding my passion at the time in voter education for young people. and financial literacy for young people to close the economic gap for Black and Brown students. And so that's where it began. And then it just evolved into what is now known as D&I, and something I'm really proud to be a part of.
Yes, and we're glad that we have you a part of it, because we need you, especially more than ever. We're going into our bonus questions. I'm going to take one more question for Valeisha in the chat. So if you have something that's burning, just a hole in your computer right now, then put it in there. But I am a lover of grits and rap lyrics, and I can't let you leave without telling us what your favorite rap lyric is and why.
Okay, so this was hard for me. Minda knows this. I was having great anxiety just before we started on this, but I'm going to go from Nipsey Hussle. And the quote is, instead of trying to build a brick wall, lay a brick every day. Eventually you'll look up and you'll have a brick wall. And that completely encompasses my career. I think, it's so funny whenever, I'm, having conversations like this or receiving an award. And it's just amazing to me that it has just been 20 years of brick by brick by brick, laying a foundation when no one knew my name, laying a foundation when, I was, like just beginning my career, seen and not heard. Like that was the motto when we first started out 20 years ago as interns and younger professionals, be seen and not heard. And so now, I look up from the computer and I'm just feeling so blessed and so honored to be where I am today. But I know it was because of that 20 years of bricklaying that I got here.
I love it. I love it. It's a marathon, right?
Yep, exactly.
Marathon. I love that. And my last question for you is, what advice do you have for our leaders watching today on what's one thing we can do to make the workplace better than we found it?
For any leader watching today, I would say if you just started the journey, it's okay. Right? If you decided now is the time to join in the conversation, that's okay. And I know that can be scary. People may question your motives. People may wonder, why now have you decided to take a stand in this space? And that's okay. However, I would be really clear in what it is that you want to accomplish. And so since we're talking in this context about Black talent, I will say this: buy Black, hire Black, invest Black, appoint to your board Black talent, procure Black, really make sure. And for me, that means not at the exclusion of others, but it's being really clear on what your goals are, setting goals around it, and not aspirational goals. Set real, attainable, measurable goals that in 1 year you can circle back and hold yourself and your leaders accountable to. And so that would be where I would start. Clear goals, a real agenda, listening to your employees, learning from us, and again, doing the work. The last thing I'll say also, if you do not currently have a chief diversity and inclusion officer, to hire one, and to do it in this calendar year, and make sure that they are in a senior role, ideally reporting to you as the CEO, but definitely in a senior leadership role, so that they can be positioned to do the necessary work.
I love that. In that vein, there's a couple questions that people have for you in the chat about CDOs. What are some things that they should be doing? Maybe if it's a company right now, they're just hiring their CDO. Should that CDO be able to map out the game plan, or how should they get started? And what are the priorities maybe that you would consider or recommend for them?
Well, a couple of things. I think if you're an organization who just hired a CDO, and for those who are listening, that's the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, I would definitely make sure that, one, they have all the data, access to the data. And so that's everything from your hiring and representation data, any promo and performance analysis data that you may have. It's your retention data, it's your progression data, it's all those things, to make sure that they can truly set a baseline for the work and understand the state of the organization that they're in, right? And so that's one, setting a baseline to really know like how to build and set your plan. That's one. The second is to have conversations. with employees. You really want to go deep into the organization. I caution any CDO, if you come in and you only play at the top with the leaders and you don't go deep into the organization to really get to know everyone within those reporting chains, to understand the varied experiences, the range of experiences that many employees have, I highly recommend you do the tour and really get to know folks, and set a solid foundation that is grounded on like the feedback from the employees. And then it's like setting the plan, which I do feel strongly is the CDO's job, but with full support and buy-in from the CEO and from the board. And so, that's how I would start. I think also allowing and empowering that CDO to do what you hired them to do.
Yeah.
Right? A CDO is not there to just make everything and everyone feel good, right? Although that's part of the job. You want everyone to feel like to be in a safe and happy environment where they can thrive. But the CDO's job is to, from the inside out, set clear goals and performance metrics and hold ourselves. They're a part of this organization, and hold ourselves accountable to those goals. And so really make sure that CDO is positioned to do the work, and empowered to do the work by how you support them at the board level and CEO level.
Awesome. I hope you all are taking notes. I hope you'll go back and rewatch this, because Felicia has dropped all the gems if you're thinking about getting in a role, or maybe something that you need to maybe pass along to your current CDO. And we have time for one more question. And right now, I'm paraphrasing, and you can hear my dog in the background. I'm paraphrasing, but companies are starting to do listening tours, asking their Black employees to talk about some of their experiences. What are your thoughts on listening tours? Do you think this is helpful, or could it be problematic? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It depends on the intention of a listening tour, right? So I think if the listening tours are intended to truly be an input, right, into the strategy, into the plan, right? So I would listen for the cues. And if you're not hearing from that invitation to the listening session, or to the leader who's inviting you to the listening session, that it is truly designed to build with you a strategy, right? That's what we should be listening for. And if so, absolutely, I think every organization should be doing them. Everyone should be a part of them. Make sure that those listening tours are very clearly defined as anonymous. Any information shared will be aggregated and anonymized. So it is, a safe space. We hear safe space a lot, but you want to be sure it is a safe space where you can share freely, but really as an input into the action plan and the strategy that will follow. Yes. Now, if the listening tour instead is, help me understand how I can do better as a leader, right? I would respectfully respond and say, I would absolutely love to share with you, feedback on your leadership style, or, whatever that person is, hoping to do there. However, I would much more be interested in this conversation also being a critical input in the strategy moving forward. And I would ask, right? And I would say, what would make me comfortable, right, as an employee participating in that. And then the last thing is, you want to walk into that listening session with clear things that you would like to see happen. Those 1 or 2 or 3 things that you really want to make sure happen, right? So an agenda, because what a listening session normally can be is also a seat at the table, right? Like, it gives you access normally to the CEO of the company and to the senior most executives of the company. So it is access. And I would take that opportunity to go in with a really clear ask. And if possible, to meet with other employees who share those interests beforehand. So you go in with a unified ask, even better. And I would definitely, take that opportunity to put an agenda item on the table that you feel like, could really move the needle.
I love it. This has been such a rich conversation. Felicia, how can people support you, hire you to speak, all the things, find you? What's the best way?
You can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm here. But for me, the best way to support me is just to continue to like crush your goals and find your path to whatever it is that you want to accomplish in life. I think we're all still on this journey together, and what makes me so happy is when I see other people win and other people succeed and other people find their purpose and they're happy. And so if you've already found it, just keep moving that needle. If you haven't yet, just commit to finding your purpose, because life is too short to do anything else. And so that's what would make me happy. Just keep doing your thing. And Minda, thank you so much for just being an amazing, amazing sister friend. Over the years, I've just had so much respect for you, and I'm so proud of you. And you have inspired women that you don't even know. I'm one of them. Before you knew me and before I knew you, I was a fan. So just thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. And I was going to publicly say to you, thank you for how you hold space for us. I mean, you're always sharing and rooting for each other and sharing your table and pulling up seats for us. And so you've been a mentor of mine from afar. I'm like, let me listen to the podcast. Let me get on. And so it's just such an honor to be able to interview you and break virtual bread with you. And I hope that one day we get a chance to meet in person when all this stuff.
Finally, it feels like it's been years of, social friendship.
Yeah. But I appreciate your leadership. And again, thank you for securing your seat and teaching us how to do it too. So have a great day. Everybody, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week at noon.
Thank you, everyone. Talk soon.